Uh,
Got it.
our presenter today is Lani Guinier, professor at the law school. She was in practice for a long time with the Justice Department and then with the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, and then taught at the University of Pennsylvania, and since 1998 has taught at the law school, where
In other words, somebody is listening.
all right. She teaches at the law school. She teaches civil rights and voting rights. And each year we have a best teacher at the law school voted by the third-year students. She's been that. And she also, maybe of special interest to this group here, she's been one of the leaders in thinking about legal education, and especially the problem which is widespread in the elite law schools of gender disparity. I don't mean gender disparity in terms of admits, because the admits are, in most top law schools, 50-50, and on paper, LSATs and so forth, comparable, but there's a gender disparity problem in performance, and Lani is very involved in seeing what we can do about that. She's also working with Tim, and I will let her introduce Tim.
Okay. So thank you, Todd. So Tim Mitchell was a student of mine at something called the School of Criticism and Theory at Cornell. And I was teaching a seminar over one summer in which I had students from all different disciplines, but these were students who were graduate students, not undergrads. And it was almost impossible to have a conversation because each one of these people had their own disciplinary grammar and vocabulary and style of participating. And one of the things that they all seemed to do was to hide their face as they were speaking because they had to read what it was that they were about to say. Fortunately, in this group, there was someone who wasn't about hiding his face behind a piece of paper. He was a theater arts PhD, and one time when it was his turn to facilitate, because I had basically decided that there was no way I could conduct a class with people from all of these different disciplines, so I essentially dispersed the responsibility to each student to speak on behalf of his or her discipline with regard to an issue of interest to them. When it was Tim's turn to facilitate, he told us to meet him in the Black Box Theater at Cornell. I had no idea what the Black Box Theater was, and I got really worried because he said, and wear loose-fitting clothing. It turned out that we wore the loose-fitting clothing, but he was engaged in lots of theater exercises that really bonded this group of students from various disciplines. And it was a profoundly changing experience for me in terms of trying to get theater into the classroom. Now, when I talk about theater into the classroom, many of you probably think of the Socratic method as theatrical enough. This is a different form of theater. And this is theater in which people are more collaborative, theater in which people are playful, theater in which people are, in many ways, given the opportunity to recreate the syllabus or the curriculum or the ways in which people learn. And so I have learned enormous amounts from Tim. I'm just delighted that he could come here. He is now the head of the arts department at Flint Hill School, which is a pre-K to 12th grade school, and many of its graduates actually end up at Harvard. So I'm glad to bring Tim to Harvard, and I'm going to turn over to Tim some of the techniques that he's used that I try and imitate, but he's the real thing.
Okay, thanks very much. This doesn't mean that we're not going to hear from Lani again. She's really deeply involved in all of this, and I just want to thank her right at the start for another great invitation. Going on now to 15 years of invitations, and we've worked together with groups, her law students, but also many other groups, including professors here most recently at the Radcliffe Institute 2 years ago, when we were working on various key issues, bringing different disciplines and working interdisciplinary work. So I'm just really thrilled to be back, and I'm sure we'll have more to say about it as we go. One of the things that we like to do is to understand that what we're doing today is just a little demo, and we're really hoping that you'll agree to participate with us and go along with it, and really to take advantage of your coming here from your disciplines, and have this interdisciplinary moment be not just a sample class of something that works, but also its own event, if you will. Is that fair to put it that way?
Well, I don't know if I want to call this an event, but
I flew here.
That's like loose-fitting clothing, yeah. Right?
So I flew here, so for me it's an event. For you it's a gathering. So one of the things that we've done requires building blocks, and a lot of my work is interactive theater and improvisational theater, but it's based on a lot of what we're doing today is based on the work of Augusto Boal. You don't need to know who he is, but if you do know who he is, he developed a theory called the theater of the oppressed, and it was linked to Paulo Freire's theories about literacy, but it became its own thing, recognized by UNESCO as a humanitarian tool used in various different kinds of settings. My major work that has happened over the last, since 1993, has been with prisoners and formerly incarcerated people with these techniques. But then again, also with all of the students that we've mentioned, and in many other places as well. So with all that intro aside, I'd really like to invite you to join me in a couple of building block exercises. These are things that we use to sort of very quickly teach some skills in image theater to students so that they can then participate in the theme of the day or the problem that we're trying to solve. Lani and I have over time focused on trying to share the power of the classroom, collaborate together, and also encourage creativity. So we're going to start critical thinking, which is crucial. Crucial, thank you. So I need a volunteer. Lani, would you mind being one volunteer? Could I have one other? Can I have one other volunteer? Would anybody be willing to step forward with us for a few moments? Thanks very much.
Don't worry, it's safe.
Yeah. Perfect, that's perfect. All right, so all you need to do is shake hands for a moment and freeze. Okay, so if we took a photograph of this, or if this were a sculpture in a park and you could walk all the way around it, it would be in 3 dimensions. Would you mind scooting forward a little bit? Okay, thanks a lot. All right, and we would then ask for various kinds of observations about what do you think this sculpture means? Do you notice the facial expressions, the body language, and all that? But for the purposes of now, if you wouldn't mind just stepping out. And you stay frozen. All right, don't go away though. Okay. So now this part of the exercise, so we look at this and we say, okay, you were smiling before.
Oh, I have to smile again?
Yeah, you got to keep it. All right, so we look and we say nothing changed on this half, but we removed something. And so now we've got a totally separate image, which might have different readings or different meanings or different things like that. Now we're going to try to complete the image by adding something to it. Now I'll just play you for a second and then give you. So if I wanted to add something really different to this, I might go like that. Okay, this is a different image. Now I'm going to step out. All right, so if you would, just take any position you like. Don't think about it too much. You're just completing this image by adding yourself back in. Fine. Now if you will freeze, and then Lani, if you would drop out. And take a look at what she's created before you add anything new. And then go ahead and add yourself back in. And freeze. And then if you would drop out. Okay, well, you get the idea, right? So we really, yes, you can relax. Thanks. So we really want to get everybody to just work with a partner for a couple of minutes to try and experiment with this. And if you have any kind of physical limitation or anything like that. Just, you know, do what you can do. But if we could, if it's all right, if I could just pair people up, is that okay with you, Lani? Is that good with everybody? Could we just have maybe you two and 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 you two? Did I just skip you? Okay, and you two, and you two, you two, you two, you two, and you two. Okay. Oh, you are? Okay. You three? Okay. Oh, okay. That's good. That'll work. Perfect. All right. Now you've got to spread out. We tried to create a little more room down here, but just go with your partner to somewhere in this room. You can use the corners, or you can use the front, or anywhere. And you're just going to very quickly start with the handshake. One thing to remember is that this game is done in silence. Okay, so once you've met your partner and find a space. Okay, everybody listen up for a moment. I just want to remind you that you're going to do this in silence and you're going to take turns. Please don't talk to each other except through completing the image. Begin, if you haven't already. Take a little time to see each new image like it's its own little sculpture. And because we're in the speed demo mode, I'm going to give you advice. You can go high, low, near, far. Okay, everybody freeze. Take a look at your last image for a moment. And now join the pair closest to you. You're going to make a foursome. And you're going to start with one of those huddle handshakes. All right, and begin. One person drops out at a time, please. Some really interesting things are coming out of it. But because this is demo mode, I'm going to ask you to freeze. And now if everybody could just come down here, we're going to make one big huddle handshake. Been known to do this all day, but because it gets fascinating. But all right, so everybody's got to get closer because you got to put your hand in like we're one big team here. Right? All right, now please remember, silence and only one person at a time. If somebody moves simultaneously, one of you has to give. Begin. Try to see the whole image as a new image after each change. Make sure we're doing one person at a time, please. and freeze this image. From where you're standing, take a look around at it. See what it is now from where it started. Thanks, everybody. You can relax. Thank you very much. Okay. That was most definitely a speedy version, but could we have a couple of observations? So, you know, what did you observe about what was happening between you and your partner versus the slightly larger group versus the whole group? Or images that you saw or anything else? Anybody? Yeah.
So Eleanor was I had incredible emotional vibrations with her. At times she was not so friendly, at times she was very friendly. The emotional impact was very strong.
Oh, very good. Yeah.
Well, when there's two people, each person is a much bigger part of the equation, and so I feel much more responsibility.
That's quite interesting, isn't it? Yeah. That's very interesting, isn't it? Yeah.
Well, it seemed like, especially with just the two of us, there were clear shifts in tone, from humorous to drama, back to humor.
Thank you. Well, go ahead, please.
I was going to say, I think I was much harder to tell what was going on as all of us. And I couldn't, I just tried to make a funny book.
Yes. Very nice. Okay. So it's a building block exercise, chiefly because you quickly learn how to make images with a group. In fact, we did the speed version really almost too quickly to get to where we could go with it. But all of the observations you're making about group dynamics also kind of make it a metaphor for collaboration and working as a group, and how hard it is to see if somebody else is moving on the other side, if you're supposed to wait for them. And then there are those arbitrary rules, too, which we could discuss if we had more time. But I definitely want to go to something that Lani and I have done together many times called the Great Game of Power. And it draws on this building block to develop a kind of power critique using space. So let's do that, and then we also have some other things for you.
Check, check.
Okay, so I have here.
Check one.
That was Big Brother.
This thing, and
Check
let
one,
us
two.
pretend.
Check
if you
one.
came closely, you could find differences
One.
among these chairs.
Hey.
Some of them are a little off-white. I don't know.
Hey.
But let's pretend that these are
Check
equal.
1, 2, 3.
Ow, to each other, except this one that just bit me. Right.
Check 1, 2, 3.
And I don't know what equal means here. I'm just going to say that they have, say, equal power.
3.
And we
Check
can do
1,
a couple
2,
of
3.
different
1, 2.
arrangements of these
Hey,
chairs.
hey,
So
hey.
if we were to try to arrange the chairs so that one chair clearly had more power
Check 1,
over
2.
the
Check
other
1, 2.
chairs,
1, 2.
what kind of
Check
arrangement
1,
could we
2.
make?
1, 2.
I'll do one just to show what I'm getting at, that maybe won't work. We'll see. Okay. So I thought this would work, but you could also read it another way, right? You could read it the other way, right? Okay. All right, so here they are, and I'm just pretending they're equal. And so if anybody would like to step forward, we want to see not so many because of our time frame, but just a few different configurations where one chair clearly has power over the other chairs.
Check, 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 check. Check 1, 2. Hey, hey. 1.
Thank you. Is that choice clear, right? So we just want to see a few, and yeah, just we don't need to stop. We're going to keep going. Well, just remember it, and yes, you could read it the other way, right? Yeah. Nice. We see at least one more. There's no cheating. Okay, thanks. I don't want to discuss this right yet because we're leading to a second stage of this. And so I'm just going to open these chairs again. Yes, thank you. And, okay. I'm not placing them in any particular order right now, but now instead of chairs, what we'd like to do is invite you to come down here and take a position that gives you the most power possible. You just enter the scene of the chairs and take the most powerful position you can find for yourself. You can use a chair, or you can take any other position. Just think of them like as a kind of a field of image that you can step into. It's right. If we had less time, more time, I'd try to have people discover those things. But you're right. You can do a lot to manipulate. Okay. Now be careful. Are you secure? All right. Now, if you would just freeze and hold that. Okay. So now we need a few more people to enter the scene. Maybe not everybody, but just to take the most powerful position you can. She's just going to stay right where she is, unless you feel unsafe. No, just the most powerful for yourself. That's all I want to say about it. It might be that, or it might not. Okay. Nice. We have two more just to get a little bit of density to this. Okay, let's freeze this image. And those of us who are in it have to peek around. And everyone else, can you remember this one? Just remember this? Okay. And carefully step down. You need a hand or anything? Okay. I don't want anybody to fall. All right. Thank you, everybody. So you got to remember that one. And now I just would like to invite people to come down and take the least powerful position you can find. Least powerful. at least 2 more just to add a little thinking to it. Okay, let's freeze this image. And those of you who are in it may really have to really work hard to peek around and see the rest of the image. But all of us take a look at this one. Thank you, everybody. Relax. Do I have time to do the last? Okay, let's go with it. I'll cut the other thing a little shorter. All right. So this is the last round. Now, typically, when we do this, we actually we have everybody get into the image and all that. But because of time, we can't do that. And that does lead to some very interesting things. But this last bit is, please take the most powerful position you can find without taking power away from anyone else. It's hard to be first on this one, but, good. Okay, let's hold with that. Take a quick look around. And just a quick question before we ask anyone in this image to move. Did anybody here feel like they either lost or gained power by any of the things that happened after you entered the image?
I wasn't sure about that.
That's all you need to say. Yeah. Anything else? Okay, so thank you, relax. And then if we could remember the 3 images that we've seen. We saw the image of take as much power for yourself as you can. We saw the image of take the least powerful position you can. And we saw take a position that would not take power away from anyone else. So for those of you who were in the images, what did you feel standing in those positions? What did you observe about how it felt when the next person came in? What were you trying to do? Do you feel it was successful? We can't answer all those now because of time. But think to yourselves. And then the second thing is, what was the difference between the 3 images in terms of the spatial dynamics and placements that people chose? And what kind of different choices did those 3 images lead to? Or the images themselves, what did you see in them? Yeah, you want to say something?
I guess my impression, at least of the first 2 scenes, was that the people who were powerful, the people who were confident, had their knees with the power So, you know, like sitting like Lani against the table, you know, kind of pontificating, makes it seem like you're familiar with it. You don't have to play by his rules. And I felt like the less powerful situations are when you feel confined by the power situation. So you take the sculpture as it exists, you take the scene as it exists, and I felt like I was hiding in it.
Hiding in it? Yeah. Yeah.
I have to say something about the second one because I participated in the first one, but I wasn't going to participate in the second one. But it was the one that I couldn't think if I went down, how would I position myself? Because I was thinking about the difference between, because you put it in terms of the least powerful, and I was thinking about the difference between the least powerful and powerless.
Ah.
All the images that I was seeing were images of people devoid of any power, whereas I thought, well, perhaps there's a way of being not conveying power, but not being powerless.
Very interesting. Yeah. 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 Go ahead.
There are individual gestures that indicate power or vulnerability, like crossing arms or standing away in your hands, and there are relationships and configurations among people that indicate asymmetries in height, asymmetries shown there, sort of shared
Great. Thank you. I think because we're just doing the demonstration, and we're going to be using some of these techniques to actually look at a case before the Supreme Court, I have to move on a bit. But I will tell one quick story, so quick that I think it'll make the point. Doing this with young men, prisoners between the ages of 16 and 20 in upstate New York. And we had the lineup of chairs, and it took us 2 weeks. We did this as our warm-up like a couple of weeks in a row. We gave it more time. Then we did nothing other than a lineup for a long, long time. Nothing other than a lineup before somebody broke with that and you know, stood apart from the lineup in different ways. And then it was like an explosion. Everybody was like jumping on top of each other and bouncing off the wall and creating upside down, you know, headstands and all this other stuff. So that was very, very interesting. And also Lani's Harvard Law School students. When we did that take the most powerful position, one of my most memorable moments was when a student in her class pulled out his American Platinum card and went right behind the highest position with that one, like, and somebody else did like a, you know, like the power behind the throne kind of thing. It was very, very interesting. So each group brings a very rich sort of, you know, not only a discussion about power, but sort of they reveal themselves through doing it, especially if you give it more time than we're giving it here. So thanks for doing that. And let's, I think the next thing is, yes, this is where we're going to go start talking about the Fisher case. So I turn it back over to you for the introduction.
Sure.
Okay.
So I also want to use this as a moment to explain, or at least give you some understanding as to why I keep inviting Tim to come back to Harvard Law School to work with many of our students. And one of the goals of Tim's efforts, supported by me, is to create a space where women are as likely as the men to participate. And so I just wanted to note that that was certainly happening here. That is, women and men, of course, you are all in positions of great power vis-a-vis your students as compared to my students who feel quite powerless, or at least many of them. But there is a way in which the Socratic method and the Socratic classroom, which I'm happy to talk about later in the afternoon, has had a differential effect on women versus men. So women don't participate as much in class as men. In a study that was done in 2004, this is at Harvard Law School, 40% of the airtime in class was taken up by 10% of the students, 80% of whom were men. So there's definitely a gender dynamic that is going on in classes, and I'm just trying to explain, in some ways, the connection just in terms of the image theater and the images that Tim was making. We're now going to move to a Supreme Court case and try and apply some of the techniques that Tim has introduced us to the analysis of the case. The case is the case by Abigail Fisher challenging affirmative action at the University of Texas. And the attorneys for Abigail Fisher, she is a white female, for those of you who don't know the case. She applied to the University of Texas. She didn't get in, and she felt that she had, in some ways, an entitlement to get in because her father and her sister had attended the University of Texas, so she felt that there was a legacy privilege that was being denied her. But she was also concerned that she didn't get in because the University of Texas was not only using a 10% plan, but also holistic review. The 10% plan was in response to an earlier case. I don't want to get into all of the details, but I'm happy to explain any of this to people who want to stay after class. But in the context of the Fisher case, what had happened is when the Supreme Court handed down Grutter versus Bollinger, which was an affirmative action case involving the University of Michigan, the court, an opinion by Sandra Day O'Connor, said that it was a compelling interest in the context of constitutional law for a state university to try to ensure that there is, quote unquote, a critical mass of students of color in the environment. It's not clear whether she meant in the classroom itself or in the school as a whole, but that was a decision made or a decision that was handed down in 2003. Abigail Fisher, with the help of some very conservative lawyers, was encouraged to bring a lawsuit against the University of Texas saying that it had discriminated against her because of her race because she was not admitted. Now, part of what the University of Texas had been doing before the Grutter case was something called the 10% plan. If you were in the top 10% of your high school class in the state of Texas, then you were automatically eligible for admission to the University of Texas. The 10% plan was instituted as a result of a prior case in which someone challenged the use of affirmative action at the University of Texas Law School. They were successful. This was back in the 1990s. So the 10% plan was a response to an earlier lawsuit. The 10% plan seemed to work based on the fact that Texas is a very segregated state. So if you were going to take the top 10% from schools across the state and you had majority black schools and majority Latino schools, that would ensure that the university, without, quote, directly considering race, was surreptitiously considering race based on the fact that there was racial and ethnic segregation. But once the decision came down, the Grutter versus Bollinger decision, the state of Texas, the University of Texas, felt that it could enhance the diversity it was getting from the 10% plan by adding what they called holistic review. And I don't want to overwhelm you with too much information, but the holistic review basically meant that you would be judged not simply based on your grade point average in high school. That was the 10% plan. But you would also be judged in what they called holistic review. Holistic review meant that they were looking at you as a whole person, and the various ways that that could be done was, number one, that you took the SAT, the ACT, whatever standardized test was the equivalent. You did well, and you also had a particular grade point average in high school, and you were then individually admitted to the University of Texas without regard
they're all in here.
to your
So.
race or gender.
Thank you.
Good to go.
Right?
Had a provision
Is
for
it? Yeah,
those
yeah, that's
people
fine. And I'll try
who-
to look towards the camera like this.
I'm not sure who I'm talking to, but hi. Well, that's okay, as long as we know who it is, and they're friendly. Okay, so going back to this holistic review, the University of Texas in the year 2008, which is the year that Abigail Fisher applied for admission, also used this holistic review. They admitted 1,200 students using holistic review. Of the 1,200 students, 216 were black or Latino. Of the 216 who were black or Latino, 183 got in based simply on their scores. That is, it had nothing to do with their race or their ethnicity. They were being considered based on scores, which are their the tests taken that everyone who's applied to college has had to take, except for those who come in under the 10% plan in a place like Texas.
Oh, they don't?
What that meant is that there were 33 students
Okay.
who were,
If we
in
only have
fact,
6 people,
admitted
we probably want to, yeah.
holistically, in which it wasn't
Okay.
dependent on their test scores, but it was a comprehensive view of this person, a three-dimensional review of this particular individual. And so it is the fact that 33 black or Latino students were admitted to the University of Texas in 2008, but not Abigail Fisher, that is essentially the issue before the court. Now, part of...
We'll probably get a round table.
Hi.
Yeah. Okay.
So I'm giving you this background because
All right, then I guess we're...
one of the big issues that came up in the oral argument...
Oh, really? She's still...
I should go back to
No.
Labs.
No, I haven't seen him in years, actually. Last time I saw him, it was, I think he came because Jonathan
can overwhelm them
Best
when
was
we get
giving
to
a talk
group
and he wanted to talk to him about something, so it was...
Well, it's just interesting because
yeah.
we can hear
He's-
them. I'm
he's got
wondering,
too
can
many
they
other
hear
things
us,
going.
and are we engaged in some kind of conversation that we're unaware of?
Oh, that's true, so all the more reason to kind of keep low.
Yeah.
Otherwise, people might ask you to do things.
So she did not make
That's
it
always a
based
risk.
on the 10%. She was above the 10% or below, whichever
That
way.
would be fine.
Right.
Yeah, you should feel free to ask them. I think. Yeah.
Okay, so what of the
I
1,200
don't think
students who
anybody's
got
driving,
in
so we'll-
because of holistic review of some sort, there are two kinds of holistic review. One is based simply on your test scores. The other is based on your recommendations, based on interesting things about you. But that's 1,200 people total. Of the 1,200 people, 216 black or Latino students were admitted. Of the 216, 83 something were admitted based solely on their test scores. It had nothing to do with their, so we're basically saying that somehow 33 students, black or Latino, took Abigail Fisher's place at the University of Texas in 2008.
My question is, were there any white students who took her place below the 10%?
Yes, of the 1,200 students, the 216 were black or Latino. The others were Asian American or white or whatever they wanted to call themselves. But most of the students were not black or Latino. Most of the students who were admitted. So she's basically challenging the admission of 33 people that she says shouldn't have been there because they were admitted based on their race. The university comes back and says nobody was admitted based on their race. They may have considered race, but it was not the driving force for admitting anybody. Okay, that's just to give you some. 216. No, because her argument was simply about race. It wasn't about her merit, except to the extent that her merit was a function of her race. Well, and the fact that her father and her sister had gone there. That was her other. What legacy admits? I'm just giving you what, if you read Adam Liptak's profile, she says that that was one of the reasons that she was upset because she didn't get admitted and she thought she was entitled to get admitted, and then there were these other people who got admitted when she did not. Okay, but the issue before the court, or the way the court is looking at this issue, is somewhat complicated, especially for people who are not lawyers. It's complicated because in Gruder versus Bollinger, which was 2003, Justice O'Connor said that there is constitutional permission for universities, in that case it was the University of Michigan, to consider race in order to improve the diversity at a place like the University of Michigan Law School, but that it could not be the single factor and it could not be based on the fact that you check a box, that holistic review was what was appropriate. Taking that message from Justice O'Connor, Texas adopted this new holistic review practice, which is now being challenged by the Supreme Court. Okay, so are we,
Yeah.
is that enough of a,
That's good, except that just to note that you did file the amici brief.
oh, okay. Well,
Just to, right?
well, the only reason that that's relevant, well, I should say there are two reasons why it's relevant that not only I, but also Tomiko Brown-Nagin and several other people filed this amicus brief because we were trying to emphasize the fact that all of the other affirmative action cases that have gone before the Supreme Court, so we're talking about the Bakke case and the Gruder case, were, and the DeFunis case, which was from the state of Washington, all of them came from northern schools or northern-like communities. So you have California, you have the state of Washington, you have Michigan. And now we are in Texas. Now Texas is different, and that was the brief that we filed. Texas is different because it was part of the Confederacy. It not only was part of the Confederacy in the 19th century, it continued to celebrate the Confederacy through the present. So if you are a black student or a Latino student or a white student walking through the University of Texas campus today, you will see monuments to Confederate soldiers. You will see a dormitory, which up until 2010 was named the Simpkins Dormitory after someone named Colonel Simpkins. Colonel Simpkins had been a member of the Confederacy as a soldier. When they lost the Civil War, he and his brother then went to Florida, where they decided it was important to form a Ku Klux Klan. They formed a Ku Klux Klan and proudly boasted that they had killed 25 black people in the period when they were in Florida. Colonel Simpkins, he liked to be called Colonel because it went back to his time in the Confederacy. He then got a job at the University of Texas in 1899 and was celebrated for the next almost 30 years for his work with the Confederacy. So he used to have an annual lecture about all of his triumphs as a member of the Confederacy. And within 5 weeks after the Supreme Court announced Brown versus Board of Education, Colonel Simpkins, by the way, died in 1929, in case you were wondering whether he was still hanging around in '54. No, he was not. He was not bionic. In any event, 5 weeks after the Supreme Court handed down Brown versus Board of Education, the University of Texas decided it was going to name its new dormitory after who else but Colonel Simpkins. So you have this person who was a heroic member of the Confederacy, bragged about it at the University of Texas, then had a dormitory named after him. And in addition, at the law school, they had a sort of a bronze sculpture of Colonel Simpkins, which the law students, as they walked into the library, if they were about to take a class, they would rub Colonel Simpkins' head because that would give them good luck on their test. So Colonel Simpkins was a big deal at the University of Texas. I mention him only to say to you that in 2010, it was because a history professor did an article in which he exposed to a group larger than the overseers at the University of Texas all that Colonel Simpkins had done, and it was because of that in 2010 that the university finally changed the name of this dormitory and got rid of the brass bust that was in the law library. Okay, so that's enough.
Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to give you some of the background as to why the amicus brief we filed was Texas is different than all of these other states, but at the same time, Texas is part of the United States and is subject to the same constitutional requirements in terms of having if you're going to use race, you have to have a compelling interest that will justify your consideration of race. Okay, so the same standard of proof applies to Texas, even though the facts are very different in Texas than in Michigan, Washington, or California.
Okay, so we're very ambitious on what we want to do with this. We want to do two things. One would be to group you and give you some of the oral argument from this case to look at it, and to do as a dramatic reading, in fact, with your group. Second, that after you've completed that, and I'll come back to why, we'll try to use the image theater technique to kind of show things that might be missing in the arguments, or that you might want to add as a response, or that we might want to put in even as things that are hard to say or see through the oral arguments, as text. So I'm going to quickly just create some groups, but each group has a packet, and we really will have to, be kind of quick. But in the packet, there are 5 copies, so that if there might be 5 people in your group, you could get together. Our original intention was, I think, to do it as a kind of oral reading, so that things would come out of the text that you might not otherwise notice. You'll see a little marking on the page where which line you should begin on. So there'd be a little marking here that would mark begin on line 22, and then there's one at the end. But you should also be looking for 3 things that we're going to use in the image theater later with your group. And I'm sorry to compress all this, but one, you've got to be looking for this issue of critical mass. If it comes up in your packet, please pay attention to that and see if you can decide as a group, what is the concern of the dialogue at that point on critical mass? What is the issue with that? I mean, we're not lawyers, except for Todd and Lani. So, you can even bring your own understanding of all that to bear. And the other is, exactly, what do we mean by it? That's number one. Thank you, you understood me exactly. Okay, number 2, what's missing? Now, you're only getting a little chunk, right, for your group, so you're not going to be able to be comprehensive. But as they go back and forth, what do you feel is missing from a discussion about diversity, about affirmative action, about quotas, about anything that you think is related to this? What do you think is missing from their dialogue?
Tim, could I just add a footnote?
Yes.
Okay.
A quick footnote.
Yes.
Sorry.
Gotcha. The issue before the court, or one of the key issues before the court, is what do we mean by diversity? If we say that the University of Texas is constitutionally permitted to consider the race or the background of people in order to further diversity, what is the standard that they must meet in order to justify that consideration of diversity? They have to show that there is a compelling state interest in diversifying, and then they have to explain, in some ways, what they consider diversifying. And that's where this issue of critical mass comes in. So Texas is saying they need to have a critical mass of students of color in order for diversity to work within the classroom and in the corridors of the school and walking through the campus with the monuments, right? But so the question is, what constitutes a critical mass that would justify the use of race as a factor in trying to promote diversity? So that's where the critical mass issue is doing a lot of the heavy lifting, and that's in some ways what we are hoping you will focus on as you look at these excerpts from the transcript of the oral argument.
Thanks. You want to pass some out
Yeah,
on that
sure.
side? Okay. So, oh yes, I'm sorry. The third one was and this week is just thinking ahead for the image theater. What work do we want race to be doing? What is the work that we want it to do? And I don't want to define it any more than that. It's from your point of view.
Am I using these 3?
Yes, if you would do those 3. Thank you so much. Can I give you Justice Sotomayor and make you all a group? And if I could give the three of you
Are we going to give?
Justice Roberts,
We'll keep. So this is
and if I could get,
2, 3,
well,
4,
the three of you, I think,
5.
could do the Solicitor General, United States position.
So you're Fisher's
Do we still
attorney.
have some groups, Lani?
Okay. And you guys are Justice Roberts.
Okay. Can I give you Kennedy?
Well, and also Justice
The
Scalia.
three of you?
get.
Yeah.
So these are the
Yeah.
Actual,
testimonies
the
and
transcripts,
the
yeah,
transcripts from
from the
Okay.
oral arguments.
that took place when?
When did they take place, Lani, in the Supreme Court?
Okay.
Recently.
She said
So-
2003, and Sotomayor was the
Oh, no, this is this year. Yep, just months ago.
Oh wait, the oral argument. Oh no, this is the Fisher case, which hasn't been decided yet.
Is there anybody who does not have
Yeah.
a packet?
But we only have. This is. Do we want just? they
Oh,
just-
let's combine a couple of groups.
Okay, so we
Okay.
want.
Can-
So
can
how
I-
about Justice Kennedy, Roberts, and Scalia?
Yeah, I guess so.
Although there's some over
Well,
here
there's a Kennedy over there. I don't know how we ran short on.
on these.
Yeah, I thought we had the right number of groups. Sorry.
What?
Oh, here we go.
Oh.
Here we go.
Okay, so the
Yeah.
upper.
Do you all have something? Yes. All right. Can I give the three of you Mr. Gare and Justice Alito? Yes. He is the
So
attorney
do you
for the
need to
University of
know
Texas.
What these different
You may.
justices
You may.
stand for or represent generally? I mean, who are the liberals and who are the conservatives? Okay. Yeah, but just tell me. I don't know who's on your Scalia and so. Well, the person though that you want to focus on is Scalia. So there's back and forth, but we just took it straight from the transcript.
Yeah.
Right. Mr. R-E-I-N.
Reen?
Yeah.
Rain? I'm
But
not sure which.
He's the one who was representing
Abigail Fisher.
Fisher.
Represents Abigail
Right.
Fisher. Who do you have? Right. Yeah, this guy is the University of Texas attorney. Okay, so just put a hand up if any group is confused about what they're doing at this point. Okay. All right. Yes. So we're kind of doing a dramatic reading of it. I hope we can get through it. Yep, across the whole group. So we just read it aloud to each other, but we're looking for those three things as we go. So if you come to critical mass, at this point we're running kind of late on time, but if you're looking at, if they mention critical mass in your packet as you go, you may wish to just go ahead and read through them ahead if you like, since you've already started that. And then the other thing is what's missing. Yeah, right. That was our intention, but I think with the sound thing and everything, we're running a little behind. So some of the groups are doing it and reading aloud. Yeah, like you could take a role almost in a play. Sorry, I didn't mean to make it sound like I was cutting you off.
No.
I just was
you
worried
did
about
good.
the
No,
time.
No, you did good. You did good.
I was really worried because we did lose time with the sound thing. And a little
Oh,
bit.
with
Yeah.
the people, but that was very disrupting, wasn't it?
It was, and it just, and also, what I didn't count on is it takes time to get up and down.
Oh.
Right. So that's good too.
so-
We're okay. We're
Okay, but I'm going to turn off
But I
our
think-
thing. Just a minute.
Yeah.
That way you can talk to me.
That's a good idea. I turned off mine too.
Okay.
So,
So
my
it
only
depends-
concern is
Time.
So this will be fine, but then to just maybe give them a taste of the image thing and give them the images from the melting pot. I'm just worried that
Oh,
I
I think.
caused that, but then the
You
sound
caused
thing.
that?
Because I said we'd get to the melting pot.
Oh no. So I think we should skip the part where they have to be the justice and move directly to the question of melting pot versus critical mass.
Okay. And so do you want them to apply, like to try and make at least an image as you were going to cut that?
No, an image of
We were given 3 choices, right? It was critical mass, or it was
melting pot.
the melting pot. We were going to be separate because we had those images.
Oh, I thought we were doing melting pot compared to critical mass.
We are. That's where we were going to end up.
Yeah.
Now I'm worried about the time.
But I think that we should, in other words, we should skip over the view of the various justices because these people.
Oh yeah. No, right. So we're doing that.
Okay. Okay.
We said we were going to do 2 more things. Okay. Excuse my numbers.
No, that's
But we were going to make image of critical mass and the workplace and what's missing. It was a choice of one of those 3, which I just did. So we skipped over the part where we were doing the perspective of the justice.
But I think that, okay, what I'm saying is I think that we want to have them without making the image. See, I think
We could just describe what we wanted them to do and then give them the melting pot image. Can we do that? Should we do that?
no, there's another part of it that let us
Right.
so they're saying that no one has a first class ticket.
Oh, I get the whole thing. I'm just wondering about the timing. Yes.
But from their perspective, that's why I'm thinking rather than have them perform their judge or justice, given what they.
We're skipping that. We already skipped that. Then the question was, do we want each of these groups to create an image? And that we gave them 3 choices. One was an image of critical mass. One was an image of something you think is missing from the argument, that is not anywhere in the discussion. And the third was what the work we want race to do. So
I don't. So the only. I think that the only thing we have time to do
is go to the melting pot.
Yeah.
Okay.
Say that. To what extent you think your justice fought of the language diversity and melting pot versus critical mass?
Okay.
But somehow we have to get them to think about what social mass is.
Right. So that's where making the. I asked them to look for it in that packet as they're reading right now aloud. Well, that's where I was hoping they would make an image because then it would tie kind of together what we did with earlier. Right. Yeah, I think maybe just cut it down to, an image of critical mass, or because we gave them the choice of something that's missing from the argument. Because it might be hard for some of them to show critical mass.
Well, especially well, one thing
Right. We could have.
give me some more
Here's another choice. We cut making the image of critical mass because that's hard to do, but we're not going to cut discussing it versus melting point. Right? They're already working on it right now. So we just asked them to make an image of something that's missing from the argument up to this point.
or what's missing or
Missing or confusing or whatever. So the question is, can they make an image? After having read.
well, maybe we should just do it and say, can I make an image of what it is they don't.
You know what? I have another idea too. Why don't we jump to the melting pot, make sure we cover it, make sure we bring that together, and then if we have time right at the end, we'll try to get back to the image thing. Because they're still doing what we asked. It's good, the dramatic reading and having the discussion. So I think we have a rich discussion. We don't want to miss it.
I'm just trying to think, what would be the most powerful okay, because I think that you just said that there's 2 different perspectives. One is that critical mass is
Well, what if we? I'm getting there. But what if we asked each of those groups, because we did want to take advantage of them, to just tell something they discovered through this reading together, just something they discovered.
or maybe just
Well, good. That's what I was going for. That's what I was going for anyway. So that, why don't we do that very quickly? We have to do it just where they are, sort of. Right. Yeah. Whatever they discover, whatever they'd like to do. We'll see how that works, and then we'll go straight to nothing. All right. No problem.
Or they may want to use the chair.
Now I'm thinking like a teacher.
What? You just heard something good?
Animation.
Yeah.
Okay, everybody, I'm so sorry to interrupt you when you are nowhere near done with this assignment. And, if I were looking around the room and Lani and I were just talking about this, we would absolutely decide, we'd say, oh gosh, we've got to just keep going with this and all that. But because we're in sort of a demonstration, we want to make sure we tie it up in the appropriate time frame. So instead of the complexity that would happen now, where we really go into something where we probably ask each member of the group to be a sculptor, to make an image out of a whole group, to then take those images and knit them together, to bring all of this down together to kind of look at it visually instead of textually. What we're going to do now is say you've had a reading, or you've had a discussion, or you've had both if you were pretty quick. And so we just want to ask your group to work together in your corner, or if you're in the front, you can come down and use this front space to make one image. And we're not going to make any rules about it. It's just something you discovered in your reading. It could be an image of one particular line of dialogue. It could be an image, as we discussed, of those other things. So how do you put the image together? Just like we did with Complete the Image. You just have to work together and discuss how you want it to look. And we don't have a lot of time for that. If we fail at it, it'll be fine, because we're really just trying to give you the indication of where we would go with this. And then we have a really, really interesting wrap-up. So, so if you would give your best effort to trying the image, we'd love to see them. And I will wander around and be helpful.
And you can pair with another group if you want to.
So if you want to use the corner, and if you all want to come down and use the front space, that would be great. And if you have like 3 people left in your group, that's great too.
But now, so what are we going to do with the melting pot?
We're going to, just as soon as this is done,
You can hand it out? Okay. It just goes so fast. We're sure you are 85 minutes. But we still 10 minutes. We have, I would say, at least another 20 minutes.
Oh, good. I'm just reading that. I'm thinking we had only 10 minutes.
No, we have 20.
Okay. I feel so much better.
Oh, okay. Oh, no. No, this is... See, look.
We freeze in there for that.
See, this is great, Tim.
Our Well, he didn't.
How long do you want us to hold you?
Oh, so once you work it out, then all we have to do is wait for the other groups to work it out, and then we'll just show them. Okay, right? Kind of in place. So carry on with the discussion about the case or whatever.
Oh.
That's right. Maybe we don't have our. Okay, so once you figure it out, you relax for a few minutes, talk to each other, and so they all catch up with the show.
But also, Tim, one of the things we could do is not worry about all of the groups.
I know.
Point of view.
You just tell them that they
Okay. Totally unfair. 2 more minutes. Thank you so much.
You would be Abigail? You're protesting. Okay, so we got it.
Okay, everybody. I know that some groups didn't get there quite yet, but we're just going to look at the images we have so far. I know, I'm sorry about the speed demo. All right, so let's start with this group right here. Can you show us your image, please? And with everybody else, you know, yes, go right ahead. Yeah. All right, so normally I'd ask people to really come down and observe this. Walk all the way around it, look at all the faces, look at all the body postures, everything. But we're going to just, if you would all hold that. And then can we go to this group, whatever, just save that, do that, okay? All right, freeze that. And then you guys had something? Okay. And this group up in the top, you have one? I'm just kind of helping. Yeah, they're the same group. That's their image all the way across. Okay. Anybody else up in the top have one? Okay. That's okay. We can't help it. They would be down here normally. We can't help it.
It's great.
Yeah. You could tell us later. All right. And anything? Anybody else? Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.